Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition's Ask the Expert series. My name is Jennifer McClendon, Education and Mission Program Senior Manager here at the NOCC. And today we will be covering the topic of gut health, the microbiome, and its relation to cancer. And we'd like to thank our sponsors, GSK and NovaCure, for supporting this program. This afternoon, depending on where you are, we are honored to welcome Dr. Beyaz, a molecular biologist and geneticist whose lab focuses on how the diet can influence the immune system and contribute to the possible risk of cancer. So it's great to have you, Dr. Beyaz, with us. Thank you for offering your time to be with us.
Thank you, Jennifer. Happy to be here and discuss the latest advances in microbiome and cancer research.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, this topic of gut health and the microbiome seems to be a pretty hot topic, at least one that we get quite often. We get questions about. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion. And so with that, I thought what I would do, Dr. Beyaz, is maybe start with some general questions and then maybe turn the focus of our questions into those who actually have an ovarian cancer diagnosis or cancer diagnosis in general. So just in general, let's just dive right in. Based on you and I had a previous discussion, and it seems like it might be helpful for everyone if you define what microbes are maybe exactly, and then maybe if you want to expand upon that and then delve into what the microbiome is. Would you mind doing that for us?
Yes, yeah, of course. So, the way that we define microbes have changed a lot over the past few centuries. So, microbes simply are these, smaller organisms that are everywhere in the world. And, some of them cause disease, some of them are benign and they don't do much, and some of them are beneficial to us. The world is full of microbes, and microbes are part of life itself. And so as humans, we evolved and lived many years with microbes, and right now every human body is composed of a lot of those microbes. So what consists of microbiome is simply like bacteria that is on our body surfaces, viruses that lives with us, and also fungi that can also be present. And so these microbial species are colonized in our from our mouth all the way to the intestine and colon. This is called the gastrointestinal tract. And this is a very big area of microbes, because this is how you get the food and eat it and digest it. And the microbes are a big part of that process. And so the other places that we have microbes are, of course, our skin, that's also exposed to the outer world, and our lungs, and also genital areas are exposed to microbes. So, we may think that, our bodies are composed of human cells alone. That's not true. We have actually, trillions of microbes that are living with us every day. And we need them. Like, if you get rid of all of your microbes, you will be an incomplete human. You will be actually very, very sick. And so in the lab, we do experiments with mice. When we deplete their microbiome, we know that, the mouse gets sick, and, they have some deficiencies in their immune system, highlighting the need of, microbes for us to become healthy.
So there is great benefit, as you're saying, to having microbes. That's not all just negative. So there's some great benefit, right?
Yes, we became who we are by having this coexistence with the microbes who live in our environment. And this is not just specific to humans. You can see this in every single organism, and they have this relationship with the microbes that their environment is colonized with. Yeah.
Okay. And that's what makes up the microbiome. Is that correct?
Yes, your microbiome is a term that you use to define the ecosystem of all microbes that exist in your body. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Some of that I didn't even know. So thank you for clarifying that. That's very, very helpful. So then how does this microbiome, the gut, the microbiome influence one's overall health in general? If you could speak to that a little bit.
So in general, we know that we need a microbiome. So I'll tell you this. So like imagine, like you're walking in a forest, right? So you have tigers and elephants and like other like species. So like all these constitute an ecosystem. So in a given day, some of these things are helpful for you. Okay, some of them are like there and they don't do harm, but they don't also help. And sometimes some of them, if you are weak, they may come and eat you, right? So that's how microbiome affects health and disease. So we know that you need this ecosystem. So
Okay.
you need to have a forest, you need to have an ecosystem to be able to live in it. But we are now slowly learning how we can selectively use certain members of the microbiome for our advantage to improve our health, and how certain types of microbes may, contribute to certain diseases.
Okay, very interesting. I love how you
can go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you put that in that analogy. Having a forest, you need both the good and the bad in a way.
Yeah.
So I love that analogy.
So the good and the bad becomes apparent in individual contexts, and that's what makes microbiome research very exciting, but also complicated.
Very complicated, I bet. So you were, I think, about to allude to this, but so then how does the microbiome affect the development possibly of cancers, and maybe what role, if there is one specifically for gynecologic cancers?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned too, there are good microbes and there are bad microbes, and you get them based on your exposures daily with, things in your environment. So your diet affects your microbiome, your lifestyle, your environment, what type of environment you live in. Are you in the city? Are you in a farm? Are you in rural areas? So those are determinants of what kind of microbiome you would end up having. And so, when it comes to cancer, we know that there is an intimate relationship between microbiome and cancer, both directly and also indirectly through modulating immune system. So we have, so far, gained some understanding, both in mouse models of cancer and human, analyzing human cancer, that there are certain microbes that associate with severity or risk of the cancer. These are, now being studied in the context of, limiting the risk and progression. And there are some that exhibit beneficial effects. So those are now being studied to make the current therapeutics more effective. And, for patients who are not responding to therapeutics, can, like a microbiome magic mix, make those therapeutics more effective. So those are very exciting areas of investigation.
Right. Yeah.
But, I just want to caution, these are right now investigational studies, and, for them to reach a clinic and common use, for a patient today will take some time. And exciting news I can tell you is that there is a lot of microbiome research going on, not just for cancer, but for other diseases, including infectious diseases. And recently there was a drug approved solely composed of a microbiome modulation approved by FDA, which opened the new era, or I would say the microbiome research and microbiome therapeutics for many diseases, including cancer. But that would require more research. I cannot tell you something that will directly help a cancer patient today, but we are going in that direction with the research that we are doing.
Well, that is really exciting. That is really exciting to hear. Absolutely. So we also get a lot of questions about and I think the majority of us aren't as educated as we think we are when it comes to prebiotics and probiotics and the role that they play in our health and cancer. So I know you and I had discussed this previously as well, but could you, for our audience, kind of talk to the role of prebiotics and probiotics, and are they safe to take? How do they play a role in our health?
So, the healthy or the good microbes in your gut, for example, that can facilitate, like better fitness of immune system and may restrict, like tumor initiation and progression. Those, you can nurture them with your diet, right? So like if you have a balanced diet that has some fiber in it, that has like all major, micro and macronutrients represented in a balanced manner, I think that would be sufficient to have a good, microbial ecosystem that would sustain your health. However, there is a lot of hype around probiotics and prebiotics, and there is a big marketing going on with respect to that. My view on that is, like if there is no definitive assessment of the ingredient of that so-called product, and if there is no definitive assessment of its mechanism of action for the so-called health benefit, I wouldn't trust it. So as a scientist, I cannot promote or say anything for something that does not have a definitive evidence. So there are a lot of products in Stop and Shop and like other places that people buy, CVS or whatever.
Exactly.
I think if you want to use them and if they makes you feel good, maybe consider using it with a grain of salt, thinking that it's because they are not regulated, it may not be what you think it is. And like what I follow as a member of this society is I try to have a balanced diet, right? So like fiber consumption facilitates a healthy microbiota. So you get fiber from vegetables, from fruits, from grains, from nuts. So if you have some diet that is composed of those, you will get some beneficial effects, potentially like flourishing your microbiome. In addition, fermented products may sustain that. However, I will come back to what I said initially. We are just learning how specific microbes may influence specific health or disease outcomes. So anything that you do needs to, have a proper explanation whether or not it's going to help you, because it also may hurt you, right? So, until we understand the rules that govern the interaction between specific microbes and specific health or disease outcomes, I cannot, recommend anything other than having a balanced diet, right? So like have a balanced diet, exercise, don't consume a lot of processed food, like highly processed food, including simple sugars containing diet. Those are not good. So avoid those, have a balanced diet, run, exercise, try to be happy, avoid stress. That's probably a good recipe that I
do
can
all
give.
of that.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
But I cannot give any recipe like have this probiotic or this prebiotic, unfortunately. Not now. Maybe in 5 years when we discover like individual species that directly can affect a disease indication like cancer, then maybe we will be in a position to say those things.
And as you mentioned too before, understanding that the microbial diversity in each person is different, so really knowing and understanding that too plays a part. So
very important point you made. So you can, I gave you the analogy of a forest, right? There are different types of forests in the world. There is like Amazon, there is, like in like Russia, in South the Pacific, the forest composition and the rules to grow in that forest are gonna change. So you may take one micro mix and it may work with your flora, with your existing flora, but it may not work with another person. So these are the complications right now that we need to solve, how we can make a microbe therapeutics.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very
We are getting there. Like I'm telling you, like in the next like 4 or 5 years, I'm anticipating that we will be able to figure out how we can develop microbe-based therapeutics.
Wonderful. That's exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Yes. Before I move into some more specific questions in regards to cancer, there's one other question I'd like to ask you about. Some of us have been reading some recent news articles about the exciting microbiome research that's happening, and how understanding the microbiome could be an important factor for in the future for early detection, diagnosis, and even outcomes for those with ovarian cancer. Could you maybe speak to this some more a little bit? I know we're early in research, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So we are actively in my lab pursuing something like that for both endometrial and ovarian cancer. Both of them do not have a screening test.
Right.
So diseases change the overall composition of the microbiome. So in cancer, if we can find a specific signal within the microbiome that can tell us or predict presence of cancer, that can save a lot of lives. So there are a lot of investigators doing that type of diagnostic research by defining what microbes in your like gut or cervix or vagina can influence the presence or influenced by the presence of a cancer lesion. And so if we can identify those with high predictive power, I think that will help a lot of people. Yeah.
Wonderful. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting into some more specific questions in regards to cancer, for someone that has ovarian cancer or another type of cancer, does the microbiome itself, does it influence how your body may respond to treatment? That was one question that we had.
Excellent question. So in both preclinical studies and clinical observational studies, now we are appreciating more and more how important like microbiome is in influencing therapeutic outcome for standard of care like chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So that like some of the initial studies came in studying like melanoma and colon cancer, and now like multiple cancer types are exhibiting this like very intricate association between microbes and like response to therapy. So we are studying it in some preclinical models right now, and the results are very encouraging. So the challenge there again, like how do you turn it into a therapy, right? So you identify that you need 5 microbes. How do you make this a drug? How do you like bring it to the clinic and like a medical oncologist can prescribe those? That will take some time, but the research right now is very encouraging and very promising. We just need to figure out the rules of like using that information, that knowledge, and turn it into a therapeutic. And again, the challenge is you cannot just take like 3 microbes, like take 3 zebras from like one forest and put it in another forest. That's not working. Or like take 3 tigers from one forest and put it in another tundra. It's not working like that. So we need to become more creative and learn more. And this will become available to the clinic as we do more research. So I think what I will highlight in that question, that we need to do more research, and we need more support from the community and from the government and from like all the stakeholders, including like pharma, biotech. We need to do more research to eventually like generate therapeutics or like help patients using the power of microbiome.
The power of microbiome. I love that. Yeah. And along the lines of, how we've really targeted some unique biomarkers for cancer, knowing that maybe one day these microbes could be additional markers for certain kinds of treatments, specific treatments, is just really exciting. So
like you can learn a lot by looking at, what microbes are doing. The challenge right now is that, how do you turn it into a therapy or diagnostic test? So I think in the years to come, like in the next like 3 to 5 years, we are going into that direction. So I'm very optimistic in that sense, but I'm going to caution you also, research is becoming more and more difficult in the current funding scheme in the United States. So we need more support. Like as researchers, we need more support to do those experiments and, ask the challenging questions and address them and, like make an impact in patients' lives.
Are there any clinical trials that are kind of going on maybe currently that are looking at this? Are you working with any of those in specific, or?
We haven't started in our projects to take it to clinical trial. We are on that path right now. So like very promising preclinical data. And so, this, in research, it requires a lot of iteration, right? So you need to, discover one thing, then vet it, then other people discover something, then they vet it. Then you have enough conviction and you convince someone that, hey, there is, enough rationale here. So then, like that requires like additional support system to set a trial in hospitals. But I would say, there is enthusiasm, and there is, with this new FDA approval for like a microbe-based product to, address like an infectious disease problem. We are getting there. Like we are getting there conceptually, and hopefully we are going to get there also practically to develop these, therapies or also diagnostic tools. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, I have one more question for you in terms of a cancer patient and the microbiome. And you may have alluded to this as well a little bit earlier when you discussed some of the nutritional suggestions. Yeah. But as we know, experiencing side effects from treatment from different plans and medications can wreak havoc on someone's gut. Is there anything that you might suggest or that you might allude to that would alleviate some of the severity of treatment side effects on the gut in particular, such as like, debilitating diarrhea, constipation, reflux?
Yeah. So this is a great question. This is one of the major topics we study in my lab, trying to understand how we can mitigate side effects of these really toxic therapies by, promoting the health of the microbes and immune cells and the, epithelial cells in your gut lining. And, I cannot give you a recipe today, unfortunately, because, this is the work in progress, but I can tell you that we are trying to identify like specific dietary components that mechanistically we know how they are gonna empower the microbes and empower the cells of your gut lining and make the more resilient to the toxic therapies. And so stay tuned. We have some papers that are gonna come up in that, and we are hoping that we will take this into like a clinical study in the like next year or following year. And so that I'm hoping will eventually like benefit some patients, but we need to do the experiments first very carefully. Yep. Yeah. So I know maybe I sound boring. I didn't tell you anything that you will eat today, but
no, not at all.
Yeah, this is the like kind of responsible way of discussing these topics. Like if I give you false hopes, that's not good. I'm giving you real hope. I'm saying that we are doing the research. Like in a year, 2 years, we will be able to give you definitive examples. In 3 to 5 years, I think we will hear more about real microbe-based therapies. I know a lot of clinical studies and groups all over the world pushing for, developing microbe-based therapies for cancer treatment, including, gynecological cancers such as ovarian cancer. So there is a lot of hope, but we just need to push the research forward. Yeah.
Wish we could move faster, right? Move faster.
I wish, yes. Yeah. I think the recipe I can tell you as a scientist, how we can move this faster. You need to empower scientists to do more experiments and less bureaucracy. Like I spent like 6 months writing grants, and I hear 18 months later if I'm going to get the funding. So if we make this more streamlined, I think we will have more, like innovative discoveries take place. But, I think we'll fix that system step by step, hopefully.
Let's be hopeful. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I think this topic is so interesting, and have really enjoyed learning more from you and hearing more from you about this topic. But we do have some questions from the audience, if you are willing to take some of those.
Of course.
Great. So one of the questions, which I think is interesting, is if you can speak to it, how do antibiotics or steroids affect the microbiome?
Yeah, great question. So, antibiotics by definition, they are atomic bomb for microbiome, right? So, antibiotics saved us like 100, like in the beginning of 19th century, like everyone was dying from infectious diseases. So antibiotics saved us, but overconsumption of antibiotics, especially when you don't actually need them, created this big deficit in your microbiome. And microbiome deficits, as I told you, we know that they, strongly influence immune system and also overall health of the organism. So unnecessary antibiotic consumption is bad. I can tell you this, for sure. So don't consume antibiotics, or don't, give your kids unnecessary antibiotics if it is not prescribed by, a physician. And so, let's say if you have to, consume antibiotics, then know that, you may need to take care of your diet a little bit to rejuvenate your microbiome. And so how do you do that? I would say, sterile lifestyle of the Western civilization did not help our microbiome, right? We live in apartment buildings. We are not, walking in the forest that much. We are not touching soil anymore. So, having an exposure to the natural environment in which, how our ancestors evolved that microbiome could be a good strategy, until we have a microbiome therapeutics that you can buy from your favorite drugstore. Yeah.
Okay. Would that be the same for steroids as well?
Yeah, so that is a little bit more complicated. Yeah. So with antibiotics, we know that the job of antibiotics is to kill, microbes. And when you kill some of your beneficial microbes, then you create a deficit. I think with steroid, the interactions will be a little bit more complicated. But, both of these, everything can affect your microbiome, right? When you are stressed, your microbiome will be affected. When you're thirsty, your microbiome will be affected. During the day, from the time you wake up until you sleep and wake up again, your microbiome keep changing. Okay, so microbiome is very dynamic. So that's also what makes it super interesting, because it is part of you and it adapts to who you are, and it also contributes to who you are. So, and that makes it very challenging to study, it's trillions of microbes, thousands of different species, viruses, fungi, bacteria. They are all very dynamic. It's literally like a forest, right? So you cannot change a forest like this. So we need to figure out how we can change forests to improve our health. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. We've gotten 2 or 3 questions asking the same question. And you may have talked about it a little bit, but maybe we can expand some more. But is there any evidence showing that a negative environment microbiome is correlated with an increased risk in cancer?
Yeah. I mean, look, when we
an
say
unhealthy gut,
so when we say microbe, there is very significant evidence that certain pathogens are drivers for cancer. So the most famous one is Helicobacter pylori, right? It's an infection in your stomach that can, directly cause stomach cancer. There are other examples like infections like HPV is a risk for cervical cancer. So, we know that infectious agents, cause cancer and make, cancer worse. We also know that certain so-called, not so pathogenic bacteria in our microbiome may, if they go uncontrolled, if they go unchecked, also contribute to that. So in the beginning of my talk, I said, when you consider the microbiome, there is, there is a really good part that can benefit you, and we know how it works. And there is stuff that's seemingly out there. We still don't know what are they doing to us or what we are doing to them. But there are also some microbes that can be bad. So that's the caution I'm giving to people. Like, before you know what you're consuming and before you know how it exactly works and influences, disease outcomes, be careful. Like, don't, like, take something just because it says, hey, it's like a microbiome booster or something like that. Like, we really need to understand them. The good news is the field is going in that direction. So we have very promising results telling us specifically how individual microbes can either prevent cancer or how individual microbes can cause cancer. So now we can, make drugs to facilitate this process or inhibit that process. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But in regards to maybe screening tests for gut health, if someone knowing how healthy or unhealthy their gut health is, which could maybe provide insights to cancer risk, are there any specific screenings or tests that are looking at that, or is that part of where we're moving towards?
So for microbiome, I mean, you can look at it. I think there are some commercial companies trying to do that. Like, they can give you like a list of microbes that live in your gut. So it's like a fecal test that can be done. That informs something. But as I mentioned to you, like, your microbes change throughout the day based on your mood, based on your diet, based on your travel schedule. So, right now it's not very useful to give you any health guidance unless, let's say, if you are heavily using antibiotics and like depleting like important microbes. In that situation, like, what I would do if I were in that situation, like, I'll try to consume like food with, like, that can help me reestablish my flora. So let's say if someone has diarrhea due to, like, some sort of like bad bug, messing up their flora, like they get this, like mix of microbes that can, like recreate the abundant species in your gut. So it works for some people, it doesn't work for some people. Why? Because, as I told you, if you take 3 tigers from one forest, put them in another forest, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So I would be like, right now, like, cautious. It's exploratory stage for these type of like predictive services. We are getting into more mechanistic stage of exactly knowing what each microbe is doing. And once we increase those examples, I think you will have more informative services.
Wonderful. Thank you.
The only like real advice I can give, like that is actionable, is if you don't have to consume antibiotic for your indication, and if your doctor is not, telling you that, hey, you should really use that, don't overuse it, because it is really, like messing things up.
Yeah, sure. Wonderful. Well, I can see how, just looking at some of the other questions that are coming through, I can see how important and how popular the topic of nutrition is, because we have tons of questions about that. And I know we can't go into specific foods. For example, one is, you already talked in your talk a little bit earlier about your balanced diet and whole foods and exercise and things of that nature, but they're wondering if there are specific foods that improve the biome to support good health in cancer recovery. But I think it's going to go back to what you talked about earlier.
I would say, look, like, there is some evidence suggesting that, for certain, like complex diseases like cardiovascular disease and other stuff, like a balanced Mediterranean style diet is, like better than Western style American diet. Well, I would say, like, we study it in the context of cancer. I can tell you what is bad. The bad is Western style American diet. If you are eating, like a very sugary processed breakfast meal, and then eating really, like processed high fat and high sugar meal for lunch, and then repeating that for dinner, not getting any vegetable, any fruits, any nuts, any fiber in your diet, that's probably not good. And your microbiome is not gonna like it. We know that, right? Like, Western diet, depletes our microbiome complexity. It's like a it's like a bomb to our microbiome, and it is not healthy overall to our body. The good is tough, because good to who, right? So you may have this friend who may be eating junk food and seemingly super healthy, right? Because the food is one component and the genes are the other component, and how they interact with one another is what makes us healthy or sick. And so that makes it very complicated, right? Like there's no a single recipe that fits everyone.
Yeah.
There is a single recipe that fits majority of the cancer patients, which is, avoid these like, hyper processed food that is, like simple sugars and things that, like your gut did not evolve to be exposed to, and follow like more like a balanced diet with sufficient amount of, sources of carbohydrate from like plant or fruit sources, protein sources, again, like plant animal sources, and then, like some fat that's like mixture of, the spectrums going from like saturated to unsaturated to monounsaturated. So, that's what I can tell you today based on what we know, that will be useful for a patient, right? We know certain things in mice. I cannot tell you as a patient to follow that, because I don't know if it is going to work for you, right? So as a scientist, I just cannot tell you if I don't know for sure if it's
absolutely on the horizon. Yeah,
it's on the horizon. So we are working in that direction. I just want to tell you it's a complicated process. That's why
it sounds very much like complicated.
But we need more research. That's what I can tell you. So talk to your representatives, talk to your people who are going to run for the Senate, ask them what's your policy for supporting scientists, because we need more research be done in that direction, so that we can learn how what we eat affects our microbiome and overall health as a cancer patient. So ask them that, because we need more advocacy here for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Absolutely. And I just can't thank you enough for your valuable insights that you've given us this evening on this topic. Very informative. Thank you so much. It's been really exciting to learn about the potential advances that are coming down the pipeline and the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for that. Absolutely.
In a year or two, I think based on the stuff that's going on, I can tell you, some precise news on individual nutrients or individual microbes, but we need to do more research in that. And what I want to also bring up is like, thank you for organizing these events, and thanks. I would like to thank the patients. You guys inspire us. Like, keep fighting, and we will fight for you. We work in the lab, day and night, with the hope that we will be able to discover something that will help you. And I want to end with a hopeful note. There is hope. Like, we are working because we found something. It will just take some time that will reach to you. But these events, I think, are very important for us to understand what patients are going through, and for patients to understand what scientists are doing. So
absolutely, yes.
So with that, I want to again thank you as your organization, doing these events, and the advocacy that you do for ovarian cancer patients is very valuable.
Well, thank you very much. Before we end the session, I just want to let everyone know that we do have a really wonderful resource that you might consider checking out with our partner Savor Health, which is a nutritional support app, and it's called INA, the Intelligent Nutrition Assistant. And so it's a free app that can guide you on some nutritional goals and maybe answer all kinds of questions that you have regarding your diet, regarding health, regarding your foods that you're eating. So if you want to check out that resource, you can check it out on ovarian.org under our resources section, or in the comments below. So that might be helpful to some of you who have a lot of those nutritional concerns. So again, thank you, Dr. Beyaz. And until next time, everyone, we will see you in September.